Hello and welcome to The Idiot on the Writer's Block. Now, this channel is full of videos of experts giving you various recommendations and advice based on certain topics, certain subjects, certain issues that could arise when you decide to start writing and publishing your first novel. But we decided, and by we I mean The Idiot, decided to do a video where our experts give one tip each on what to do when you're writing your novel. What is the first thing that pops into their mind, or what is the most important thing to avoid, the most important thing to do, the most important food to eat? So we asked all of our experts to give one tip. What is the one tip that they would give a writer who is about to write their first novel? Hi, I am Marcus, and I'm the idiot on the writer's block. So I asked our experts, what is the one tip that you would give a new writer about to write their first novel? And here are all the tips that all of these wonderful people gave.
When you're querying an agent, you want to do your research. That is the number one thing you want to do. You want to find out how to write a query. You want to go to the bookstore, go to the section that your book would be shelved in, and pick up all of the different books, read that, the copy or the back cover or the front flap, whatever it is, look at that, because that's supposed to sell your book, and that's what a query should do. And if you just say to me in the query, I don't know how to write a query, I'm just running with this, I'm going to be like, well, there are people who researched it. I'm going to go ahead and read theirs instead. And so it sounds mean. It's not as mean as it sounds. But, going through having writers, who don't research, they don't, look at what does this agent actually want to work on? What does this agent like? I'm very transparent about what I do like to read. And so, and it's a weird, wide variety. I'm like, I want all of the dark horror things. I want psychological thrillers, serial killers. I also want a super light and fluffy rom-com. I'm all across the spectrum with the books that I work on. And so whenever I get a book that's an agent or an author who's querying me, who's like, I know you don't rep this, but that, I'm just like, yeah, I'm out. I'm done. Assuming that someone, you're the exception to the rule, or that you can break the rules and still get the same level of respect from us, it's a fatal flaw. We get so many queries, and if you don't take the time to know what we work on, or respect what we are and are not looking for, or look at the rules for submitting to the individual or to the agency as a whole, we're automatically going to be putting up some walls, because do you really want to work with a person who completely ignores the way you ask them to do things? So that's probably the biggest one for me.
So common mistakes that writers make can be something quite big, which is orientation. So a lot of writers don't intuitively understand how to keep the reader orientated, by which I mean planting your characters in a location and then writing them in a way that the reader always knows where they're standing. It's hard to instruct a writer or an upcoming writer into how to get around that. I mean, a practical way of doing it, and this is something that Stephen King talked about in On Writing, in the case of description. If you're going to set a scene in a restaurant, say, think of 3 details that come to mind when you imagine a restaurant that you know. So the example that he cites is a steakhouse in New York, and he says, okay, when I walk through the door, I hear the sizzle of steak, there's a blast of cold air, and the bartender at the bar has his shirt sleeves rolled up and he has hairy arms. Those are 3 very small details. And then he goes on to like write a paragraph of like just a made-up scene that he makes up for the purpose of that. And those 3 details are the only descriptive details he puts in. But it's the kind of thing that once it's in, you feel like you can see the whole restaurant. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I think that I think a lot of writers will either overthink or underthink orientation. And, you know, it's about finding a balance. But then this is where passing it back and forth to trusted friend and readers and getting a lot of eyes on something can help.
Okay. My biggest tip to a first-time writer, and somebody told me this tip years ago and it really helped me: read the debut novels of all the writers you really, really admire. If you're somebody actively working on your craft, what you'll see very often is that the debut novels are really good, sometimes great, but not perfect. But what's also interesting about that is if you're writing and actively writing all the time, you're not so far away from that level. That's what's really encouraging about it. And it's not being arrogant, it's not being overly confident to think that. Absolutely read their first novels and you will see, oh, okay, I see shades of the great writer they were to become. But actually, my writing is not necessarily so far off from this. So that's one big tip that I would give. Emerging writers.
I would say the thing that has worked for me is, unfortunately, those early mornings before your kid is awake. You get up at 5 a.m., you do the 5 a.m. writing sprints. I think getting up before your children are up or staying up late after your children have gone to bed is what a lot of parents do, or maybe you work on nap times if your kid's little enough and they do actually nap. But I think that whatever you do, that first time you get in the day, if you write or work every day, or maybe you do it a couple of days per week, the first thing you do should be the most important thing that you do. So maybe you write first. So you get 4 writing sprints in if you do writing sprints, or you get an hour of writing time in before you do other things like building your author platform, sending out a newsletter, doing YouTube videos, whatever your other tasks are. So I would say do the most important thing first. And sometimes the most important thing isn't the urgent thing. So you have to kind of carefully consider and look at your priorities really critically, because as parents, we don't have a lot of time.
Mine are quite simple, actually. I would say read, first off. Read voraciously. Read anything you can get your hands on. Read as a writer, not as a reader. Try and study what people are doing and why you think they made these decisions and stuff. Read books on writing, fiction, not too many, and listen to writers talk about writing, and write. Just write. Get on with it. Do the practice of writing. Lots of people talk about writing and never write. Don't be that person. Just write. And rest as well. Take time out, rest, give yourself time to think, put down a first draft, leave it for a while. Don't just say, I'm going to power on with the next draft. Give space. I generally stop halfway between a novel, have a rest, have a break, maybe write some short stories or something like that, get back into writing a novel. But just make sure you don't burn yourself out as well.
Maybe writers don't really think about a lot, but as readers, some of us do, is the actual design of the book itself. Like as far as like the cover art, and if there's any like cool, unique design elements to the book, those are something as readers that we appreciate, and it just kind of makes the book a little bit more memorable to us.
The first thing you should avoid doing is, let me put it this way, the first thing you should do, and it's kind of like an because it's amazing how many people don't do it, is understand what books are like yours. Like a lot of writers, they want to know that they've created something completely original. And so they don't want to know what else is out there, because then if I wrote a book about anthropomorphic vegetable terrorists and then some other guy wrote a book about anthropomorphic vegetable terrorists, well, then I'm not going to want to write my book anymore, because then it's not going to be original. But knowing what books are like yours is incredibly important, because that helps you with the marketing. And later on, it's going to help you figure out how to position your book to the right readers, because then you can start drawing comparisons. Well, if you like so-and-so's book, then you'll like this book, and then you can give them the reasons why. And I think that is probably the most fundamental tip that I would give to new writers is understand where your book fits in the market. And if it doesn't fit in the market, maybe it is truly unique. Well, then you can temper your expectations accordingly.
And there you have it. One tip from each expert, giving you tons of tips from loads of experts on what you need to do as a writer writing your first novel. You can check the description below for links to all of their works. But what do you think? Do you agree or disagree with any of the tips that have been given by our experts? Do you have any that you would like to share with aspiring writers who are working towards writing their first novel? Or what are your general opinions on some of the tips that you have heard? Please put all your thoughts in the comments to this video. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel to get more great tips on how to write and publish your first novel. I am Marcus, and I'll see you next time.